Hey y'all, welcome back to the New Tribe. I'm so excited to be back with a new episode and a brand new guest. And our guest today is unlike any that we have had on here before. Colby comes from the energy industry. I always want to get tongue-tied when I say that. And he is working on revolutionizing the way that we utilize energy. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. And be sure to check all of the links below if you want to contact, connect with, follow Colby and Tobe Energy, and watch the progression as they grow and bring a whole new realm of energy usage, consumption, and sourcing to the world that we live in. I hope you all enjoy it. Hi, guys. Welcome back to the New Tribe. I have an exciting new guest with us today, Colby, and he's a little bit different than some of the guests that we've had in the past. And I'm very excited for you to share your story with all of us. Colby, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Colby DeWeese. I'm CEO and founder of Tobe Energy. What we do is make hydrogen from water, like a true zero emission green energy process. And we do it a little differently. So most people right now waste a lot of energy making hydrogen. We do it kind of as efficiently as storing energy in a battery. So really think that we can, catapult into, a zero emission energy revolution. And I think we connected over just kind of like following your calling, and that's all that this mission has been to me. Is just one after the other.
Absolutely. That was one of the reasons I was so excited to get you on and talk to you. I found your page, gosh, I feel like it's been a couple of years ago
I think
at this
so. Yeah.
point. We've been trying to do this for a little while now. But between both of our schedules and all of that, I'm grateful for you to be here with me today and that we finally get to have this conversation. But when I found your page, I was researching hydrogen water from a health perspective. And I was researching different ways to consume hydrogen water and what it does in the body. And of course, I stumbled upon your page and I started learning about your story and what it is that you do. And the thing that struck me the most is every video that I've seen of you speaking, you just resonate with so much passion and excitement. And you can see it in your face and hear it in your voice that you believe so deeply in what it is that you're doing. And that's something that I talk about all the time. And it's so important, in my opinion, to convey to our listeners is it doesn't matter what your thing is, but the thing that lights you up and makes you passionate, there's a purpose and a reason behind that. So do you mind sharing a little bit of your story? I know that you came from a different industry and how you've gotten here.
Yeah. So I guess I'll give kind of the longer, medium long version of it.
We
But
like to ramble, so.
yeah, by degree, I guess I've been in Oklahoma for a long time. Was initially born in Colorado, but moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma when I was pretty young. My dad was an inventor at TV Guide, so he was one of the guys responsible for bringing the TiVo to market, which was
Nice.
like the first digital video recorder. So
I
my child,
remember the
yeah,
days.
yeah, this is the coolest thing. My childhood was like actually spent in the garage. Actually, just went through his workbench and found his garage soldering iron, but like doing prototyping electronics. I guess fast forward to college, I became a chemical engineer. Joined the oil and gas industry right out of college. I was working all around Oklahoma, primarily in western Oklahoma, then built a natural gas plant in Okarche, which is just kind of outside of Oklahoma City. That project was one of the coolest things that I've ever done in my life. But while I was doing that, I was also getting my master's of oil, gas, and energy law from the University of Oklahoma. And we were a small, scrappy midstream natural gas company, building projects, obviously letting a 25-year-old kid run a $75 million project. We were pretty understaffed, but that was like the exciting part of it. But
Yeah.
during that time, we got bought by this huge, giant company, Marathon Petroleum.
Hmm.
And with my oil and gas energy law degree, I kind of got pushed into this process safety management, responding to federal, audits, investigations, doing incident investigations too. And through kind of this like really crappy process, I actually had to investigate a huge safety incident that happened at the plant that I actually built. So whatever, I felt like there was pressure from corporate for it to be an equipment failure. I didn't think that it was, but the financial reason for it being an equipment failure is to get insurance money.
Sure.
So I went from, a long career in oil and gas where I was like, we do the best we can. We try to keep people safe, keep the oil, gas in the pipe. Nobody's doing anything nefarious. Like, we are supplying 92% of the world's energy. Uh, why do people stress about this so much? Like, this is just how it is. To thinking like, oh, there is kind of, this backroom deal type stuff that does affect people. So that was one of those long, hard looks in the mirror where I jumped into the hydrogen combustion industry, where we were burning hydrogen, which I quickly learned was like the coolest thing in the world because hydrogen's, it's just like natural gas, except when you burn it, the only byproduct is water. So
Yeah.
there's, the carbon dioxide problem, which people can argue is or isn't a problem. But what does happen is a lot of particulate emission. A lot of heavy metals come from burning fossil fuels, and that's not arguable that that's not a good thing for anybody. So to
Hmm.
be able to replace that with just water vapor, and it goes right back into the water cycle. We're not using up no water's lost in the process. It just was this like the coolest thing to learn in the world. But the issue is kind of where we get the hydrogen. So working on the combustion side of things, I was working with all sorts of different hydrogen providers and really learned that 95% of our hydrogen right now comes from fossil fuels. So it's
Hmm.
like, what are we even doing trying to convert to hydrogen if most of it comes from fossil fuels? Like producing hydrogen, it's a process called steam methane reforming, actually emits more CO2 than the entire aviation industry, which is like
Wow.
huge.
Wow.
Yeah, and only 5% of our hydrogen comes from this green renewable process called electrolysis. And really the issue is that it's a super inefficient process right now. It's a process that really hasn't been changed in the last 100 years, outside of like small tweaks. What we do is a different type of process. It's most comparable to like an incandescent light bulb is like how they currently do it. They're worried about like
Hmm.
just like Edison, like what's that filament that we can make the perfect thing out of? They're like, what's the perfect metal that we can make this electrolyzer out of? They're using platinum, things that you'd expect to find in a wedding ring. Where we're more like an LED. So incandescence, burned your fingers, wasted a bunch of heat doing so. LEDs are cool to the touch. They actually are driven differently. That's that like power block that you have to plug in. When
Hmm.
you plug in an LED, it converts the power into a different type of energy. So pretty much down to the tech, that's what we do. That's kind of the long story, but kind of explains my why of
Hmm.
getting into it. And it was at that green hydrogen like combustion job, I saw these problems of like how expensive green hydrogen it is, and it really just like I started as like a nights and weekends research project, where I quickly spent about $150,000 of my own money, setting up like a full scale power electronics lab at my house, doing all of this testing, and got to the point where I was like, okay, I know that this is way more efficient than anything on the market. Just insight from past projects and insight from growing up making things with my dad, uh, and probably looking at things in a very different way than most people do currently, and following that calling of like messing up, doing things the cheap and easy way, and stumbling into solutions and just listening, the whole way through.
Listen, I love that story because it's interesting that you kind of found yourself almost investigating yourself a little bit in that process of being in a position. So it sounds like you were in a position in your career that was pretty relatively stable, I would imagine, as much as oil and gas can be.
Very stable, very, very well paying, like great retirement, great everything, like no complaints in the world.
And so then something inside of you pulled you away from that. And that's I think one of the hardest things for people to do is when you have stability and security and you have achieved this position in your career that you could have just coasted. And when you chose to kind of go a different route, what was the response that you experienced from the world around you, your family, friends, colleagues?
That's a very good question. I don't think that I even told anybody that I was doing
Oh,
that.
really?
It was such like a violent push to go do something else. Like I had done my first interview with the hydrogen company. I wasn't far into it by any stretch, but I felt like it was going to happen. So I quit before I had signed my job offer, which is
Oh, wow.
probably pretty crazy.
That's a huge leap of faith.
Yeah, it's like one of those violent pushes that is like I cannot do this oil and gas thing for another day. And I've had a couple of those in my life, and quitting the hydrogen job to start my own thing was very similar. It was like, you've got to do this, just this internal push that didn't make any sense. You know, I was somebody that was always super financially responsible, like didn't spend too much, always saved. And both of these things were like in complete opposite of how I traditionally look at things. But it was like so uncomfortable to sit there that is like I had to take action.
So, did you go through any experiences during, I mean, even up to now, where you felt like not necessarily that you've made the wrong decision, but were there any moments that you really had to dig deep and find that light that guided you on this path to begin with? Because I know so many times there's alternatives, right? There's all these other things, and especially with your experience and your industry and all these things, I'm sure there are lots of opportunities that draw to you. Was there a moment where you questioned how much work it was going to entail and the amount of money that you were investing of your own, that questioning of if you're on the right path?
Definitely once. And I think I can pretty confidently say it only happened once. It was right after I quit the hydrogen job, you know, with the intent to do what I'm doing now full time. I just got hit up on Twitter out of the blue by the CEO of a really exciting nuclear energy company. And he just said, "You sound based. I'd love for you to come be my principal process engineer in California." And it
Oh,
was just
wow.
like like this was a chance to be employee number 5 at a startup doing something that I still felt like could make a huge difference in the world with low emission energy. That was probably the only time that I was like, oh man, should I consider anything else? Outside of that, I've really had just this, you know, head down mindset of work really hard, try to be a good person, and things will figure themselves out. I'd be lying if I said that there weren't many dark times in that. Like, almost any time after I pull an all-nighter working is like, what am I doing with my life? Like, this is insane. I'm too tired. I can barely function. My brain doesn't feel like it's working. But anytime there have been like the big kind of milestones, like running out of money, which has almost, you know, happened a couple times now before getting this major round of investment most recently.
Congratulations, by
Yeah,
the way.
thank you. Yeah, I think almost 4 times I've been within like a month of running out of money, and something just always happens. Like it's all some just that head down, keep doing what you're doing, listen to the world. Like it wasn't like I was out asking for money. In these
Mm-hmm.
past times, it was just somebody that would come into my life, or I'd win. I got selected to be a part of this startup accelerator in New York City that gets like 3,000 applicants, and they only select 8 people. And it's just like out of nowhere, something like that happens. So each and every time I've been like, oh, I should really be thinking about this. Something comes and tells me like, nope, it's going to all be taken care of.
Divine alignment just keeping you on the path.
I genuinely believe so.
So I've watched you grow as Tobe Energy for the last couple of years, which has been super exciting to see. You've done a TED Talk. You've just landed a massive investment in the company, and it's really. I think when I started following you, you were still trying to. I mean, obviously, you're still getting the idea out there, but it was a very new inception, and it has just, from my perspective, exploded in these last couple years, which is amazing. And I agree, divine alignment, like the ability for it to just bloom and unfold the way it is incredible. How has that experience been for you, like on your own personal journey through life? How are you growing alongside these experiences?
I am growing a painful amount, which is good for me. I
Yeah.
like in my life, I would say that I'm more of like the introverted engineer by nature. Like
Hmm.
I'm like I just want to nerd out. I want to stay at home. I want to watch a documentary on something. Um, Getting out in front of people and like selling and kind of pushing this vision and mission to make renewable energy affordable and accessible with something that I proved in a garage has required a lot. When I started it, like I just thought I'd go to an investor and lead with like, oh, here are the technical specifications, and money would just happen. I quickly learned that it's more about them having belief in you as a person,
Hmm.
and them being able to understand your vision. Like they might not necessarily care about all of the technical details, but it's like the communication of that vision and your purpose, and doing it with conviction such that they believe you, and they believe you enough to give you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Whereas came from the engineering world, where it's just like something happens or it doesn't. The investment world is more like of a coin flip for a lot of
Yeah.
investors. So I've really had to grow as a person into, figuring out the best ways to communicate very technical things. And where I'd always be like just the engineer of like, this is what's possible in the next 6 months, like really take a step back and go, well, what's possible in the next 5 years? And well, yes, that might require everything going right in my favor, being comfortable with saying that and being that as a person and genuinely thinking those ways has required a lot of growth and practice, talking and talking and talking and getting up on stages where the last place in the world I'd want to be is, all eyes on me, center attention. But did it, did that with a TED Talk, and got up in front of like 500 people at Google HQ in New York City in June, which was even crazier because you've got this giant screen behind you. It's run like a professional, very professional, like you're going on the TV situation, which just made it all the more nerve wracking. But kind of like stepping into those shoes and just becoming what God has called you to become, and learning through that process to be there.
That's amazing. Um, You strike me as a pretty confident guy generally. Is this something that you've had to develop through this process? I know you said you'd rather be like the nerdy kind of like in the background. Is this something that, and I know that you also practice jujitsu. We're a jujitsu family, so I can see that maybe there's some of that discipline that comes in from your practice. Um, is there anything that you've had to do within yourself? Like, do you utilize any kind of practices, like when you're about to step on stage or give a presentation or a pitch or something like that? Have you found any modalities that work for you?
I'm, I got this from jujitsu, but I'm a big fan of box breathing. Where
Oh,
like
yes.
in for 8, hold it for 8, out for 8, hold that for 8. Like repeating that like 5 times or even a little bit more in some instances. Um, yeah, that's the most impactful thing for me. I also do a lot of kind of like positive self-talk, especially before getting up on stage in front of people. Um, just the kind of prayer, mindfulness, say, to the universe, like, if this is, what you're willing me to do, I want you to help me be successful here. That and some box breathing is what, gets me through most things that I don't want to do. But I do think that there's a big confidence aspect from jujitsu, for sure. Just having that like background of, I know that I can handle myself in any situation that's actually scary.
Hmm.
Uh, gives you kind of like the leeway of like walking into a room and not being scared. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? I go against this black belt that's 350 pounds and holds me down for 5 minutes. Like, nothing is worse than that.
Yeah, right? At least when you get on stage to give a talk, you don't risk tearing any ligaments.
Yeah, like, worst thing that's gonna happen. I guess I always prepare, so I always feel like there might be a big long pause where I'm trying to catch my place and the memorization of the script, but nobody else knows that. Like, that could just be a dramatic pause.
Yeah.
And so worst case scenario, it's a little of an awkward dramatic pause, but that's the worst case.
No.
Is at least what I tell myself. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. I was very curious if you were going to say any type of breath work because I know for many people who step into an arena of some sort, and this is a central focus that we maintain, especially like in the sacred medicine space, is like you come back to your breath. When your mind starts to tell you all the stories and go through the narratives and the fear and all of these things, and you come back to your breath, you're back in this present moment, and then you can focus again. And so I love that. That's your thing.
It's like that centering, grounding feeling that
Yeah.
a lot of times I lose. Like when I'm, kind of spun up in stress. And as soon as you get it back with that breath work, you're like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like,
Yeah.
I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. It's stressful. That's part of it. Like, I asked the universe, for a lot. The universe asked a lot of me. It's going to be difficult. There are going to be times that are very hard and very uncomfortable. But that's what I asked for. That's what was asked of me. So why should I expect it to be easy?
Yeah.
Kind of coming back to that as a central thing through breath work always makes me feel like, okay, we can do this.
I was going through several years ago a very difficult time within my own life. And as every time I would pray about, the things that I was going through, I just kept getting the message of don't get comfortable. Because I think that's something that we as human beings, we seek comfort and security in like this safe little space. And it's like, okay, everything's good. So I'm just going to sit here. I've got this great paying job, happy little home. I'm not going to rock the boat. And so for probably about 6 months, I would write on my wrist every day, don't get comfortable, don't get comfortable. And that was my reminder to keep pushing. If something sounded like a really appealing and comfortable little like cocoon that I could climb into, that was my cue. Like, don't get comfortable and remember, keep moving forward because you're being called towards something greater. And you had, it sounds like, a very comfortable cocoon to
Yeah.
stay in. How has that experience for you of stepping outside of your comfort zone and really, so often we want to grow, but we fear expanding and we fear the change that that demands of us and how we must evolve in our identity and the way that we show up in the world and our discipline and the things that we must sacrifice. And so as you've been called to really take on this massive project, and the calling comes from a trust and a belief that you are creating something to offer to the world. How have you navigated those spaces of staying outside of, or keeping yourself outside of the comfort zone as you might want to settle in when the money runs out and the stress gets high and maybe people are like, oh, that idea is never going to work. This isn't the world we live in. We run on fossil fuels and we do this and da da da, and you can't change the system. How do you continue pushing yourself there?
I guess I really see just as like things with the company evolve and grow and things with my relationships evolve and grow, that all of that evolution and growth has and is going to require me to be a different version of myself. So it's like, okay, giving kind of my first like talk in front of all like the employees and going, this is how we're driving the boat, this is where we're going. I was very nervous. I was very anxious. I stayed up all night the night before, kind of writing notes and everything down. And I opened it up and I tripped over my words, kind of one of those embarrassing, like, blah, 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 like moments. And it's like, you know what? I'm learning through this too. This is new for me as well, guys. But I promise you that I'm going to try my hardest to fulfill this, to lead us to success. This is something that's been on my heart, and it's been something that's been on all of the guys that work with me's heart. So it makes it easy to fall and, stumble, but pick yourself up and try to step up to that next step. And just the more and more practice that I go through, the more and more comfortable that I feel with it. Like the first swath of employees that started was, one thing, and now this second swath is easier. So it's like I know all the things that I need to do and say and that sort of stuff now, and
Yeah.
I kind of just feel that way with growth, and everything's always going to be changing. It's always going to be, it should be getting harder. It should be getting more difficult, but that's because even in relationships, you're growing together with somebody, and you should continue to push yourself with that other person to be better versions of yourselves. And yes, it's like uncomfortable to hear from your partner, like, hey, you're kind of letting me down in this regard, but how much of a like beautiful pleasure is it that they care about you and your relationship so much that they want you to show up as the best version of yourself, the version that they know you can be. I kind of think of everything similar to that. It's like the pain is all just like the universe telling you how it needs you to show up to be the best version of yourself.
I love that. That's a beautiful perspective. And with your, I love when you said, it should be difficult and it should continue being difficult, because if you find your comfort zone again and having new employees come in and you've gotten really comfortable and you've built the confidence in that space of, okay, I can handle this. It's not awkward anymore. I got it down. And then you expand more. Mm-hmm. And then you got to like feel out those new edges. And it's almost like I think of how crustaceans, they have to continue growing their shells. So they almost have to like break a little bit to build new shell and expand into them so they can continue to grow. And um, okay, fact check me before, maybe edit this out, but I'm pretty sure that its lobsters are genetically immortal. They just get to a point where they lose the energetic ability to continue growing a larger shell. And I love that because I feel like as humans, we're kind of the same way. We're energetically immortal, and our purpose in this life is to grow it and expand it and feel those fractures and those cracks and breaks that are required to continue expanding into the fullness of our calling and the greatest capacity of the beings that we are meant to be. And so I appreciate that you have
Yeah.
that perspective and that you can carry that with you because, in my opinion, when you are anticipating the next challenge, then you're gonna be ready for it and then just knock it out and it doesn't knock you over.
Yeah, a funny saying that me and my partner say, and I guess this is probably mainly me, is like when all of these like things are happening and like the small stupid stuff in business somehow gets magnified. Like, oh, you got double charged on your credit card. Now you're at your limit. Now you can't do X, Y, and Z. That just things have become more and more of a headache, and I didn't expect it. But I'll always say like to my partner, the horrors persist, but so do I.
There you go. I love that. From what you've explained, it sounds like you've kind of always been on this trajectory. Like you grew up with the example of your dad being an inventor. And so that was very normal in your reality of something attainable and possible. And so, what would you say to someone who is feeling a call towards something? Like your calling has been to creation and invention, and we all have a call towards something. But a lot of times we want to look at like, oh, look, this guy did this. Let me find my way of doing that similar or same kind of thing. But what you're calling is you're not inventing even in the same realm of, you're in a totally different realm than what you watched your dad do. And you've branched out from what's familiar from your industry and your experience background and everything. What kind of advice would you give to someone who's like, I'm feeling this call to something, but I don't know how to take the steps?
I think I very strongly believe in always listening to your calling, even when it doesn't make sense. The only time I've really been able to make sense of everything that's going on has been like in the perspective of what I'm doing now. Like when I was in college, I got into Yale to do a PhD in computational biology, which was similar to my college research, but very different than chemical engineering. And there was just something that like, that was what I dreamed about, going to get a PhD from a great school for the past 2 years. When I was working my summer oil and gas internships, I was like, oh yeah, this is just a way to make $27 an hour and get my apartment paid for. When I graduated, there was some calling that was like, no, take this oil and gas job. And I took the oil and gas job, and probably for the last 10 years, I've been like, did I make a mistake doing that? And then now I look at it as, no, if I hadn't taken that oil and gas job, I would have never had these experiences that led me to hydrogen. If, I hadn't had my dad pass away, I just look at things through such a different lens. And now I think, following this calling, which I feel like is my kind of bigger grand calling, looking at all of like kind of the callings along the way that didn't seem to make any sense, I go, oh, now this all seems to make more sense. So I think, listen to the small callings that you step along the way. They're going to lead you to, the bigger calling. And for me, the bigger calling was always something of like, just make the world a better place. Like, make a positive impact on the world. Like, when you go camping, you're supposed to leave it better than you find it. And I think about that all the time, and always just thought about, at the end of my life, I want to leave the world better than I found it in some way, shape, or form. And all of those like small pushes along the path that at the time I was always like, do I regret doing it this way? Do I regret doing it that way? All seem to make sense now, and I see like that kind of end calling as something that's like actually tangible.
Oh.
So I think like the scarier the calling is, I guess there's an even better story in this, to be completely honest. When I was working at that hydrogen combustion company, doing a ton of jujitsu, but finally feeling like I'm in a really, really great spot in my life. Like, everything's really stable. I had just gotten out of a relationship, but I was like, I'm, doing me so well that I don't want to date or do anything at this moment in time. But I do want to do something like that's a side project. And so at the time, like mentally, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to write a book on, engineering tips and tricks to be more renewable, but also save money. Because at the end of the day, I think like reduce, reuse, recycle should be not something that you have to spend more money for.
Yeah.
So I was like playing with this idea of writing this renewable engineering book, and it was a night in October, and I can like definitively tell you, I was in my kitchen, and I swear on everything that I like heard a voice that said, "No, you're going to do something so much bigger than that."
Wow.
And I was thinking about like, oh yeah, there's got to be better ways to do this electrolysis process. I was poking my head around and researching that, and I genuinely like could say that I like responded back to that voice like, I don't know anything about this electrical engineering business. I'm a chemical engineer. And it was like this like warm assurance over me that was like, you'll figure it out. Like, it'll be uncomfortable, but you'll figure it out. And that was probably the scariest of all callings and the most like divine, universal thing that I've ever experienced. And probably sounds concerning when I say it out loud, but
No, not at all. Don't let any doubt seep in there.
yeah, but it was such a strong push in this way. I sat there and thought about it for 2 months, and at the beginning of January, like 2 months later, I had this whole plan of how to test things and run things, and I liquidated $100,000 of my retirement account to buy all of this equipment and start working on it. There's like just that like, yep, I'm this fiscally responsible guy. I heard this calling. I'm just gonna do it, which scared the shit out of me. Like, genuinely.
But that's such a great example of one of your moments of growth, right? Because you had to take a financial risk, which if you were so responsible and everything, probably not something you did a whole lot, probably took a big step, like a step into the void, a leap of faith to pull that trigger, to put so much on the line out of your own future. And you listened and you allowed yourself to expand into that space.
Yeah, it is terrifying. And like, my only proof is like every step along the way since has been filled with, the perfect coincidences, the perfect, like, there's one little part and piece that if I made it out of a different material from my 3D printer, the whole setup wouldn't have worked. I just happened to use the right material at the very beginning when I'm prototyping things, even though I had no idea why. Things like that I probably would have given up if, my first big test setup didn't work. Just so many things like that, where it's like the universe was just like nudging me along in this direction. And then you learn like, oh wow, that was crazy that happened that way to keep me on this path. because I didn't have any idea that this one plastic was, a super insulator versus all of these others that wouldn't have worked.
That's amazing. I love it. And it's one of those things that's just like you can't explain it, you can't equate it. It's just your proof. As you are going through your day to day on this journey, and I'm sure inside of your mind, so much of this time putting it all together and then just seeing it align in the external reality around you and start to fall into place. How can you not feel like you're headed in the right direction?
Yeah.
So, what can we expect to see out of the future of Tobe Energy?
We're finishing up our kind of prototype testing for what is going to be the world's most efficient electrolyzer to make green hydrogen. So, it's going to be as efficient as you store energy in a battery in your phone. So most people don't think that there's any energy loss from the wall to their phone. There's a little bit because your battery gets a little hot, but there's really not much. Right now, the systems that are currently in use, like 50% of the energy that they put into it gets lost. And so we're going to be up around this like 94%,
Wow.
which completely changes the economics around using zero emission hydrogen.
Yeah. Is this going to be, are you focused on the use being in an industrial capacity and in a residential capacity? Like where's your focus for offering this?
So our first focus right now is to replace people that already use hydrogen for one reason or another, to replace that hydrogen made from fossil fuels with this green hydrogen with zero emissions. So that's like the best way of like directly impacting as fast as you can. You go to these people, you're going to get the same exact hydrogen. It's just going to be zero emissions and lower cost. And they go, where can I sign?
Yeah, for sure.
The use case that I'm most excited for expanding into is e-fuels, which is like a synthetic fossil fuel. It's where they pull CO2 out of the atmosphere and then they combine it with green hydrogen. And then you can make like a synthetic methane or synthetic gasoline, which is actually net negative, pulling more CO2 out of the air than it ever takes or ever produces. And with our economics around the green hydrogen production, that can be cost competitive with fossil fuels. So it's like, why would you not want to actively clean the air with the gasoline that you put in your car?
Yeah, it sounds like you're answering a lot of our cultural, environmental questions that we have surrounding issues of how do we remedy these issues that we've created?
Yeah, because you can use all of the existing fossil fuel. You can still use your natural gas stove. You can still use your car that runs on gasoline. But you can like rest knowing that, oh, this is actually just this next leap forward in technology where it's better for the environment than doing nothing, which is crazy to think about. And it's the same cost.
Amazing.
That's the use case that I'm most excited for, and think that, I think it's within grasp. We've got a agreement signed in Oklahoma up around Tulsa, Broken Arrow. We'll be installing our first 10 to 20 units at this the world's largest combustion R&D test facility, Zico. So super excited about that. That should be sometime in the middle of next year. And from there, raise some more money and get as many of these things out to the world as we can.
That's amazing, Colby. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Well, I know that we're kind of in the middle of a workday right now, so I'm not going to keep you too much longer. But thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing so openly and so beautifully and allowing our listeners to kind of get a peek inside of this badass CEO and founder. And you're in this space that feels so out of reach to most people, but at the end of the day, we're all humans and we're all navigating the same path. We all have the same life experiences and our own perspectives. And the way that you've chosen to navigate yours and to respond to your calling, it's just amazing to me. I've had one of my favorite quotes for many years, and I've had it on my Instagram profile forever, is be fearless in pursuit of what sets your soul on fire. And I feel like you just embody that in such an awesome way. And I'm so excited to continue watching what you do and how you grow and just revolutionize the energy industry. And as a mother of the upcoming generation, and I will have more generations to come. Thank you for what you're doing, because I was just having a conversation earlier today about how, looking towards the future of the world that our children are going to be growing up in and living in and bringing their own children into, it's a little bleak. It's a bit dreary, but it gives me so much hope and inspiration to know that there are people such as you who are really just following this divine inspiration. And I know that through that path is where we find our resolution and revolution and changing and becoming the humanity and the world that we are meant to be on the correct path. So thank you.
Yeah, I have a ton of optimism for the future. I think that the world can be a very, very, very beautiful place if we let it. And that's the question: is if we'll let it.
Absolutely. If we can figure out how to work alongside nature and follow the cues that everything is there. Nature is the most intelligent scientist, chemist, biologist, like everything's there. And this is something I always teach my kids is whatever answers you want, observe them in nature.
I completely agree. Completely agree.
So,
I appreciate
all
this
right.
conversation.
Thank you so much. And I hope to chat with you again soon when you have some new and exciting updates for us.
Absolutely. We'll keep in touch for sure.
All right. Have a great rest of your day, Colby.
You too. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
And as always, go with love. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for listening and sticking around. If you have any questions or any recommendations of other guests that you would like to see us have on the podcast, please feel free to reach out, comment, email, whatever you got. And also make sure you go follow Colby on Instagram. He's H2O Colby and Tobe Energy. So you can follow along this amazing journey that he and his team are on. Thank you for being here. And as always, go with love.